Alright, coming in at number 10 is Captain Marvel and Rogue. A lot of people may not even know about this one, because I definitely did not until a couple of months ago. The mutant Rogue first started out as a villain in Marvel Comics. That part I did know. She was part of Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and one of their first attacks on the Avengers involved ambushing a recently returned Carol Danvers. Rogue, who was still learning to use her abilities at the time, accidentally fully absorbed both Danvers' memories and her powers. The attack completely drained Carol of her powers and erased her mind, and then just to add insult to injury, Rogue immediately decided to chuck Carol off the Golden Gate Bridge. Luckily, Spider-Woman was there and able to rescue her, and Professor Xavier was able to restore Carol's memories, but it wasn't complete. The actual emotional connection to those memories, as well as to her family and friends, was completely gone. Carol remembered things, but it was more like watching a show about her life instead of actually living it. Carol regained her powers eventually, but Carol's life was destroyed by a scared young woman who then had to deal with the consequences of her actions and the harm it caused to both of them. Number 9. Professor X and Magneto. These two are like the perfect definition of frenemies. While they have massive respect for each other and almost view each other as brothers, their ideologies are just in complete contrast, and it has put them on opposite ends of the battlefield more often than not. Now, before you jump on me in the comments, I know Magneto is basically a hero now in recent years, and the two of them became allies more than enemies. That's why they're all the way up here at number 9, but to deny the fact that they were one of the biggest rivalries in Marvel Comics, it's just plain wrong. They basically fight for the same thing, the betterment of mutant kind. But while Xavier believes they should try to work with humans, Magneto believes mutants to be the future of the world and the dominant species. They are both right and they are both wrong, and they both have huge respect and love for one another. It's such a great dynamic. If you're enjoying this list so far, be sure to drop a like to let us know that this is the kind of content you want to see. Number 8. Venom and Carnage. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the motivations for symbiotes seem to be very simple. Obviously, their motivations are fueled by their hosts, but without the host, a symbiote seems to just be a very primal being. So, when Venom's offspring bonded with a complete psychopath in Cletus Cassidy, the desire to end lives and cause destruction seemed to be almost double for them both. But for Venom and Eddie Brock, while they started out as straight up villains, Eddie and the other hosts have instilled this sort of odd desire to do good in Venom, in his own weird way. Venom can be bad, but he is good enough to know that Carnage is really bad, and Venom would even put aside his hatred for Spider-Man to fight Carnage alongside the web-slinger the first time they ever came to blows. And that's a pretty serious thing for Venom. Carnage has been Venom's #1 enemy ever since. Number 7. Daredevil and Bullseye. I've said before that I think Bullseye is one of the more ruthless villains in Marvel Comics. He's just not a nice guy, and the evidence for that statement can be found in his history with Daredevil. While the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, could also stand as Daredevil's biggest rival, it was never personal between the two of them. But for Bullseye, their rivalry became more and more personal, especially in Daredevil number 161, when we learned that Bullseye had become completely obsessed with his defeats to Daredevil, even hurting others like Black Widow just to get at Matt Murdock. But then, he just lost it when the Man Without Fear defeated him yet again. He now started to see strangers on the street as Daredevil and would send them to the afterlife. He's absolutely nuts, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say the rivalry became more personal for Daredevil as well, especially after 2 separate occasions where Bullseye had ended the lives of Matt Murdock's biggest love interests in Elektra and Karen Page. Number 6. Sentry and the Void. Let's try a different approach to this. What about a character whose own rival is himself, or an aspect of himself? Honestly, with the sheer level of power possessed by the Sentry, it almost makes sense for his main rival to be his darkest aspect, the Void. When Robert Reynolds injected himself with an experimental golden Sentry serum, an offshoot and supposed improvement of the super soldier serum, he gained the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns and became one of the world's greatest superheroes. Until the Void arrived. The Void nearly took out Sentry's sidekick, Scout, it drove the Hulk into a rampage, and took the lives of over 1,000,000 people in Manhattan. When Reynolds realized this was his own dark persona, he enlisted Doctor Strange and Reed Richards, and together they wiped the memory of Sentry from everyone in the world, including themselves. Let me know a character who you think could be a better rival for the Sentry, other than the Hulk, down below. Okay, number 5. Wolverine and Sabretooth. Where Xavier and Magneto are frenemies, these two are essentially mortal enemies, and they take it to an insanely violent level. Honestly, I feel like a lot of this is just because of Sabretooth. Like, Logan seems like he just wants to live a peaceful life, and Sabretooth just comes out of nowhere, multiple times, to ruin that. It's almost frustrating, but they wouldn't be the same if their rivalry did not exist. They actually started out as friends in the beginning, and then, on orders from another bad guy, Sabretooth brought Logan's girlfriend to an end on Logan's birthday. Then, ever since, this became a tradition, as every single year on Logan's birthday, Victor would hunt him down and fight Logan until he was basically at the pearly gates, just to prove he was better. And these guys have lived for hundreds of years, so imagine that every year on your birthday. That would suck. Number 4, Thor and Loki. Thanks to the MCU making Loki so damn likable, this rivalry became a bit more suppressed in recent years, but this rivalry goes back before pretty much anything else. These guys are literally gods and have been around for essentially thousands of years. It all began with childhood pranks, as Thor was exceedingly proud and Loki is the trickster god, but Loki's schemes would become more and more intense and endangering as they grew up. Loki trying to bring Thor into trouble and battle by manipulating the Hulk is the whole reason Thor joined up with the Avengers and the team was formed in the first place. There is also the fact that Loki would be the cause of Ragnarok, the fated apocalyptic event that brings the end of Asgard. You can't really find a rivalry that's outlasted this one, as it is quite literally myth and legend. Number 3, Reed Richards and Dr. Doom. Nothing like a good old college rivalry to keep you sharp and on your toes. If Victor Von Doom and Reed Richards, two of the smartest men in Marvel Comics, had teamed up together or tried to encourage one another, the world would probably be a utopia. Unfortunately, Dr. Doom is one arrogant guy, and he is much more theoretical, famous for using magic and mysticism alongside his genius, whereas Reed is incredibly practical. Reed also seems to not respect boundaries, as in college, he read his rival's research on trying to save his own mother and then proceeded to tell Doom all the ways it wouldn't work. Doom's arrogance led him to dismiss Reed, and then it turned out Reed was right, which led directly to the scarring of Doom's face. This was before they had even become their super selves. Their rivalry comes almost entirely down to the fact that Doom will never admit that Reed is smarter than him. Doom is petty, but we love him for it. Number 2, Captain America and Red Skull. What's interesting about this one is that there probably wouldn't even be a Captain America without the Red Skull's existence. If it weren't for Johann Schmidt's activities on the Axis side of power during Marvel's World War II, then the plan for a super soldier serum to combat him may not have even appeared. Stopping the Red Skull was one of Steve Rogers' first assignments, and his whole Captain America persona was created in stark contrast to the Red Skull, who had become an icon for his side of the war. As such, the rivalry between these two characters is one of the longest running ones in Marvel's history, other than Thor and Loki. Even after Captain America was frozen on ice for decades and came back to the world, Skull found a way to follow him. The Skull even finds ways to come back from the afterlife just to keep on fighting Captain America. And in at number 1, Peter Parker and the Green Goblin. The answer to who Spider-Man's main rival isn't really clear-cut as someone like Captain America or Thor. It's usually a bit of a tie between Dr. Otto Octavius and Norman Osborn. But if we are being honest with each other here, the personal connections and personal attacks that belong to Green Goblin have absolutely made a bigger splash in Peter's life, both personally and as a hero. Gobby orchestrated the Clone Saga, one of the most infamous Spider-Man stories that saw the hero completely doubt who he was. And he did it all from the shadows after taking the life of Gwen Stacy and coming back from his own demise. He returned from the afterlife, and his main goal was to still mess with Spider-Man. Doc Ock has succeeded in actually defeating Spider-Man, but Norman makes his life as miserable as he can because he can strike at Peter personally. Today, Norman has made a change to become a hero as the Gold Goblin, but in the very first issue, you get the vibe that that won't actually last.
Number 10, Spider-Man and the Human Torch. In one of his earliest adventures, Spider-Man broke into the Baxter Building in an attempt to impress the Fantastic Four, in hopes of being invited to join the team. This led to a misunderstanding and a conflict between Spider-Man and the team. Although this encounter left both sides with a bad taste in their mouths, it was Peter and Johnny who had the most tension between them due to Johnny's need to be seen as tough and manly, and Peter being reminded of the popular kids who used to pick on him, like Flash Thompson. The Fantastic Four eventually came around to the webbed wall crawler, and Spidey and the Torch became close friends, even even referring to each other as brothers. But a friendly rivalry remained between the two. This is perhaps best memorialized in Amazing Spider-Man number 657, when we got a glimpse of a camping trip taken by the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. The two began an elaborate and ever-escalating prank war, with some highlights being Human Torch heating up a bowl of water to try and get a sleeping Spider-Man to wet himself, Spider-Man covering the toilet paper with webbing, Johnny using sunscreen and his powers to write the words "Flame on" Spidey's back, and Peter creating a fake shark fin out of webbing to scare the Human Torch when he was swimming. The two put a pause to their prank war in order to team up to play an elaborate trick on the Thing, so while the two heroes have nothing but love and respect for each other, their friendly rivalry seems to bring nothing but joy to each of them, which is a nice change from all the other entries on this list who seem to genuinely hate each other.
Do Andrew and I have a friendly rivalry, or do we have a rivalry where we hate each other?
I hate you.
I only have the utmost respect for Andrew, so we'll have to resolve this at another time. Also, a quick reminder, if you like this video, you should do the things that people do when they like stuff, like click like or subscribe. Number 9, Moonstone and Ms. Marvel. Speaking of rivalries where people hate each other, I also know a lot of people might not know who Moonstone is, and might say, Amanda, there are bigger rivalries than this one that you could be covering right now. And hey, I hear you. But while this list is about biggest rivalries, I also like to keep things fresh by touching on characters and relationships in lists like this that we don't often get to talk about. One, because it helps me to stay sane by not telling you about the same stuff on repeat because, you know, been here for a while, guys. And 2, it's just fun to learn new things. I love learning new things, and I hope you do too. So for those of you who don't know, Moonstone was a member of the Thunderbolts and is Carla Sofin. From day one, she was pretty much a straight up villain. Even when she was a psychiatrist before she got her powers, she was a pretty mean and awful psychiatrist, to be honest. At one point, she becomes the Dark Avengers version of Ms. Marvel, standing in for Carol Danvers, who refused to join up with Norman Osborn's team, understandably, and who at the time was known as Ms. Marvel. This was before Carol took up the mantle of her former mentor, Mar-Vell, and became Captain Marvel. As a result, the two ended up becoming adversaries, and after Carol dies and is resurrected, Carla fights her for the title of Ms. Marvel. She kinda loses this fight, but in a weird twist, she also finds herself again during it, becoming Moonstone once more, with Carol also becoming whole again as a result. Also, for those who are wondering, this is who Carol was fighting in the thumbnail / the cover photo, if you would prefer, for our part 1 to this list, which you should definitely check out if you haven't done that already.
I don't actually hate Amanda. I just hate that she's clearly more popular than me.
What?
Number 8, Northstar and Guardian. I know, I have an Alpha Flight problem, just deal with it. Compared to other Marvel teams like the Avengers or certainly the X-Men, Canada's super team, Alpha Flight, has been relatively free from interpersonal conflict. Part of this is because of how the team is divided up across the country and rarely actually have to team up with everyone, and partly because Canadians are so polite that rivalries are much harder to spot. However, 2 teammates who have never gotten along are Jean-Paul Beaubier and James MacDonald Hudson. Hudson thinks of Jean-Paul as an arrogant, petulant jerk, and Jean-Paul thinks of Hudson as a manipulative government stooge. Both characters have relatively valid points, and as someone who wants Quebec to be its own separate nation, it makes sense that Northstar would have an issue with the guy dressed in the Canadian flag. But what is the source of this rivalry? Before the formation of Alpha Flight, Northstar believed himself to be an only child, but when Hudson began searching Canada for potential members of his super team, he discovered both Northstar and his long-lost twin sister, Jean-Marie. He introduced the two and made both of them members of Alpha Flight, giving them the opportunity to get to know each other while serving as team members. You'd think that would make Northstar relatively grateful, but when they discovered that Jean-Marie was actually mentally unstable, suffering from dissociative identity disorder, Northstar wanted her removed from the team for her own well-being. She refused to leave, and Hudson allowed her to stay, making Northstar believe that Hudson was taking advantage of her poor mental health to keep a powerful team member around. The two have had a rocky relationship ever since, with Northstar openly insulting Guardian in the field, and Guardian mostly brushing it off unless it begins to interfere with the mission. Despite their issues, they are capable of supporting each other from time to time, with Northstar reluctantly attending James's funeral the first time he died, and James showing up in uniform to Northstar's wedding in Astonishing X-Men number 51.
I'm the Human Torch and you're Spider-Man, and you're mine.
I can live with that.
Oh my gosh. Also guys, show Andrew that he's also popular and give him love in the comments. Number 7, Masque and Hawkeye. No, not that Hawkeye. this Hawkeye. Madame Masque has beef with a few heroes and some kind of weird romances too, but that's for another list. Like her relationship with Iron Man, which is a love affair, but then it can also be adversarial too, since, you know, she's a villain. Anyways, with Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, these two developed beef after Kate attempted to help out Clint Barton's Hawkeye while he was trying to retrieve a tape from a black market auction that showed him assassinating a dictator. Don't worry though, Clint didn't really do this. The tape was actually a fake to help protect the true identity of the agent who completed the mission on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Black Ops team. Kate ended up impersonating Madame Masque at the auction, wearing her mask and her clothes after incapacitating her, something Madame Masque would not easily forget and would actually swear revenge on her for, hence their rivalry.
At least we can all agree that Adam's the worst of us, right? Number 6. Hulk and the Red Hulk. When Bruce Banner transformed into the Hulk in his first appearance, he stumbled across Betty Ross. The sight of the Hulk caused Betty to faint, and her father, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, vowed to destroy the monster. This has led to one of the longest rivalries in Marvel history, as Ross has used his position as a general to hunt Banner across the world, hoping to either capture or kill him. The fact that Banner managed to defeat other threats such as the Abomination led Ross to eventually develop a grudging respect for him, but the hate never really died down, not even once Bruce married Ross's daughter, making the man his son-in-law. They came to terms briefly, but once Betty was killed, the rivalry fired up again. The rivalry reached new heights when Ross teamed up with villains such as MODOK and the Leader to transform himself into the Red Hulk. After years of stewing hatred, Ross was able to actively fight the Hulk and even defeat him in their first encounter. The Hulk of course eventually bounced back and took out Ross. Ross has bounced around with his allegiances, having been everything from a villain to an Avenger, but whatever side he is on, he never turns down an opportunity to make life difficult for Banner or the Hulk.
Then Adam is the thing, and then we can both prank Adam together. Adam, if you're watching this video, watch out, but you're probably not, so haha, we're gonna get you! Number 5. Storm and Emma Frost. A lot of people obsess over the rivalry over Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, that exists between Jean Grey and Emma Frost in the comics, but this rivalry between Emma and Aurora runs honestly even deeper. It comes from a time when Emma was still a villain, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, and ended up body swapping with Storm. Needless to say, Storm was not very happy with the White Queen and held a grudge against her for years thereafter, the whole body swap incident. Body swapping is so creepy in stories, like that is a total violation of someone's privacy in like a whole other way. Talk about evil. I mean, I guess unless you are like consensually swapping bodies with someone, then it's just kind of weird with the potential I suppose to even be cool. Even in the Jean Grey and Emma Frost giant-sized comic that came out only a few years ago, it was shown that Storm still thinks of Emma as her rival, even though they are both now technically allies and both sit on Krakoa's Quiet Council.
And at 4 we have the Flash and Superman. Oh, the age-old question of who is faster. The Man of Steel, faster than a speeding bullet, and the guy whose one power is speed. Damn it DC, just let Flash have it. Luckily in most of the run-ins that these two have had, the Flash has been the victor, including an especially hilarious race where the UN summoned the two of them just for the purpose of seeing who'd win a race. Great use of resources there, guys. In case you want to check it out yourself, that particular race happens in Superman Volume 1, issue 199 in 1967.
Number 3. She-Hulk and Titania. She-Hulk and Titania have a very interesting relationship in the comics, and while they may be on more friendly terms now in regards to Titania moving away from being a true criminal, as so many Marvel villains have done in recent years, these two ladies are still rivals. In fact, they even came together to kind of celebrate the love of their rivalry in a friendly manner by creating, in essence, a fight club for others to get together and blow off steam. Although initially Jen did suggest that it's just kind of a fight club between them two exclusively. Titania and She-Hulk make for excellent rivals because they are both fierce, determined characters who are well known for their strength and indomitability. In fact, they have a lot in common. And when they fight one another, because they are both so tough, neither has to really worry about actually hurting the other, as they are fairly evenly matched. Also, you know their rivalry is iconic when it's used as the opener for a She-Hulk series, which it was recently in the 2022 She-Hulk comic by Rainbow Rowell. And if you aren't reading this comic, by the way, you need to be, trust me.
Number 2. The Thing and the Hulk. Although many would say that the Hulk is the strongest one there is, Ben Grimm might disagree. These two super strong heroes have gone toe-to-toe several times over the years, starting their conflict over 60 years ago in Fantastic Four number 25. Their fights are always an event fans look forward to, with no clear and consistent winner ever really being named. In their first conflict, Ben was able to come out on top, likely because of his ability to keep a cool, clear head throughout the fight. In their next fight, in Incredible Hulk number 122, Hulk had to fight fight the entire Fantastic Four, but managed to hold his own before eventually being taken down. Their next one-on-one bout in Fantastic Four number 112 ended with the Hulk landing a devastating and almost lethal right hook on the Thing, giving him his first victory. They fought again in Fantastic Four number 167, but Ben began transforming back into his human form, giving Hulk a massive advantage. Their next fight in Fantastic Four 320 ended in a victory for the Thing, but Hulk was in his Grey Hulk form, thereby being half as strong as his usual green self. Grey Hulk had a rematch with the Thing in Incredible Hulk 350, which went more his way. They've had a couple more bouts since then, with the Hulk usually coming out on top, but despite this, the two have become friends, bonding over their experience as normal men transformed into something more. In issue 49 of The Immortal Hulk, we got to see how, despite everything, Ben will prioritize their friendship over their conflict when he took the time to comfort a Hulk who had just been attacked by the Avengers and make sure that he was okay before helping the Green Goliath in his quest to defeat the One Below All and the Leader. Despite this, it is likely only a matter of time before we see these two come to blows once again in the Marvel Universe.
Number 1. Wolverine and Cyclops. It's a rivalry as old as time. Well, not as old as time actually, but as old as Wolverine's first appearance almost. Wolverine and Cyclops have been known to butt heads almost since Wolverine first joined the team. Shortly after Wolverine joined up with the X-Men, Cyclops seemed to struggle with Wolverine's more aggressive nature, causing conflict between the two. And soon after joining, Wolverine developed feelings for Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, Scott's girlfriend, which also complicated the two superheroes' relationship and feelings towards one another. While they have always been rivals though, Scott and Logan are also like brothers. They've been through hell together as fellow X-Men, and while they may not always agree, they definitely also are more often willing to work together to help innocents and their fellow mutants. And that is a matter they do at least always agree on, that of helping those who need it. At the end of the day, they're both superheroes, and while they may fight from time to time, they will inevitably end up working back together as teammates, friends, and basically mutant brothers.
And at number 10 we have Emma Frost and Jean Grey. This one is partially due to the rivalry over Scott. Personally I don't really get, because he's kind of a big suck, but more on that later. These two ended up arguing over who loves Scott more, for the most part, instead of, you know, hating each other for more valid reasons. Ladies, he's not worth it. And at number 9, Wolverine and the Hulk. These two go way back. Wolverine's first appearance was in The Incredible Hulk, where he assisted the big green guy defeating a Wendigo. The two have been in many a fight, and in one variation the Hulk even ripped Logan in half. And if any of you are familiar with Old Man Logan, the series ended with a confrontation between Logan and Bruce Banner. Got intense. And at number 8 we have Wally West and Kyle Rayner. While Hal Jordan and Barry Allen have been known to be best buddies at times, their successors, Wally West and Kyle Rayner, didn't really feel the same way about each other. Wally saw Kyle as undeserving of his position, and Kyle saw Wally as irresponsible. It's more of a friendly rivalry though, full of snark, but deep down there's still a lot of love. And at 7 is the Hulk and the Thing. Wonder why these two have a rivalry? I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the fact that they're so damn similar? The Hulk makes our list again, this time fighting a foe that partially inspired his creation. Stan Lee has stated that he wanted to create a character inspired by Frankenstein's monster, and the Thing's popularity only helped push that idea along. These two have fought often in the comics, but at the end of the day Stan Lee has vouched for the Hulk, saying he'd win in a battle without any doubt, although he does appreciate the Thing for his quick wit. And at 6 we have Guy Gardner and Batman. Oh, those hot-headed Green Lanterns. Batman didn't care for the Green Lantern Corps, but Guy Gardner didn't help that much. He didn't like Batman's no-nonsense attitude when leading the Legends team. So how did the two settle their differences? Bruce punched him right in the face, knocking him out cold. And to Bats it just kinda seemed like a minor inconvenience. And at 5 we have Cyclops and Wolverine. Scott, you really shouldn't be so stuck up. No wonder Logan isn't your best friend, or your biggest fan, or likes you in general. First off, there's that whole gonna steal your girl rivalry going on between these two over Jean Grey, and it only got worse over the years. Their values differed a lot when it came to the social and political state of mutants. Then there was that whole X-Men Schism story arc where Scott went a little crazy and used young mutants to kill their foes, and Wolverine was not having any of that. The two fought after Scott made some dick remarks about Jean and Logan, and well, went down.
Number 4, Daredevil and the Punisher. When it comes to the good guys of the Marvel Universe, there's somewhat of a spectrum of morality, with most of them falling somewhere in the middle. While a lot of characters like say Iron Man aren't kill crazy, they also aren't above taking the lives of their enemies if it comes down to it. On opposite ends of the spectrum you have Daredevil and the Punisher. While Daredevil is strictly against murder and will avoid it at all costs, only resorting to it when under mind control or when he has literally no other choice, like when he killed the helicopter pilot who was using a minigun to turn Hell's Kitchen into a war zone down and killing several people a minute in Daredevil number 233. On the other end of the spectrum is Frank Castle, otherwise known as the Punisher, who goes out of his way to murder as many criminals as possible, believing that people are incapable of changing. This difference of methodology of course has caused the two to come to blows several times over the years, as Daredevil tries to stop crimes and put criminals away with the legal system, while Frank has no faith in the system and usually tries to kill every criminal he comes across. The two are known to try and convince one another that their way is better, sometimes in very extreme ways, such as in Punisher Volume 5 number 3, where Frank chained Daredevil to a roof with a gun taped to his hand, telling him that he must shoot him in order to prevent him from killing a criminal. This rivalry has spawned some of the best moments in each of the characters' history, as well as a mini-series called Daredevil vs. Punisher, which is of course completely devoted to this rivalry.
At 3 we have Green Lantern and Green Arrow. In the 80s, Green Lantern and Green Arrow were paired up in a series together that largely focused on social issues. Written by Dennis O'Neil, the idea was to pit Hal, who at the time was a bit of a crypto-fascist who stood for the establishments of law and order, against Ollie, who was written as more of an outspoken anarchist and was all for counterculture. The two journey across America, witnessing a ton of bad shit, including corruption, racism, pollution, overpopulation, you name it. Green Lantern's even kind of shamed for being a racist at one point. And then there's the whole Speedy is on heroin thing. While it's obvious the two probably wouldn't have a very fair physical fight, they're always butting heads on a social and political level, which always makes for a good read. And at number 2 we have Batman and Superman. Oh, these two. The Infallible Man and the Dark Knight. They've fought a lot, and while they're generally on the same page of do the right thing, Batman tends to have some more sinister tactics than the Man of Steel. And in some variations of the characters, their core values are put to the test against one another, sometimes with them going to extreme lengths, like in The Dark Knight Returns, and Execution 2001, and in World's Finest, a lot of issues in World's Finest, and in Injustice. The list goes on. Finally, at number 1 we have Captain America and Iron Man. 2 words: Civil War. While the government and the UN are really to blame for creating the immediate tension between these two, their personal virtues have always been at odds, and what starts off as a debate turns into a full-blown war in the Marvel Universe, with heroes having to pick sides. And if you read the 2006 story arc in the comics or even saw the recent film, you'll know what kind of trouble this rivalry stirs up. They ain't good.